This is going to be a free introduction to the class on Tulpamancy. That is creating conscious thought forms. If you follow the channel, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is the idea that you can think things into literal existence in slices of reality that are not normally visible. But if you're really good at creating these thought forms, you can bring them into material existence, or at the very least, have them make material effects to our reality. So thought forms go by many names. Tulpas, Egregores, Paracelsus called them Aquastors, and they all essentially mean the same thing, and that is you are intentionally creating a being. You may have heard of spirit animals, right? This idea that you basically create a comic book character in your mind, essentially, but with the belief that it's going to take on a material or a real existence in reality and have effects on the world. This all falls back on this idea out of alchemy, Hermeticism, and Egyptian thought, Buddhism, that this place is essentially a dream world, a spiritual sandbox, if you will. And because it's a dream world, it's slightly malleable, it's changeable and formable at the base code, let's say, right? It's essentially the same thing as the Matrix. And therefore, if you have a grasp of that and you have a sort of deep belief in that, the very nature of having a belief in it allows you to open these doors to understand the truth of that and have a deep knowing. And then it converts perfectly to the idea that when you have a deep knowing that you're in a dream, when you're sleeping and dreaming, you can begin to alter the dream. And so the same idea sticks here. If you have a deep knowing this reality is a sort of bigger dream, then you may be able to actually affect reality in profound ways that would make you essentially a co-creator with God. And I believe the best place to start in order to start experimenting with this idea is with tulpas. And the best place to start with tulpas would be a spirit animal, aka a Patronus from Harry Potter. And so we're going to be touching a little bit on how to create a basic Patronus protective tulpa, spirit animal, but also helping you to understand how this might actually be possible. Because, a bunch of people are going to laugh and scoff at this, thinking that we're just, kids that never grew up, except there's mounting evidence to suggest that this is quite possible and may actually be the case. And there are very smart individuals who were studying one thing, thinking they were going to possibly find one thing, and ended up finding another thing. And that other thing was the potentiality that thoughts manifest reality, and that these thoughts that manifest can take on their own independence, their own agency, their own consciousness. Okay. Jacques Vallée is a perfect example of someone who was investigating the UFO phenomenon, essentially. And the more and more he researched it, the less he thought it was extraterrestrials, and the more he thought it was some sort of inherent system of potentially control and manipulation. He found that the same characteristics of the UFO and the gray and green aliens, they had the same characteristics as angels and fairies from long ago. And what he found more with a lot of these UFO cases in the last 100 years or so, and just a lot of the supernatural reports for hundreds and hundreds of years, the entity, the beings, the craft that he was studying always seemed to, its image always seemed to reflect the overall sentiment, positions, desires, beliefs of the culture in which they came to, right? And so flying saucers and gray aliens come to us now, and we're a very scientific, technological society. But a couple hundred years ago, when angels were literally appearing the same way the flying saucers and gray aliens do now, we were much more religious, and although the biblically accurate angels look way different than what they were seeing most of the time, people probably had it in their heads that angels were a lot like people with wings, and therefore these beings showed up as people with wings. And now we have a sort of a question of paradox here, and that is, are we making them come into existence, or are they intelligent on their own and making themselves appear, basically possibly reading our minds, or like reading our sentiment or reading into our culture and then making themselves appear as such? Or because we all have these ideas in our head, we actually make them manifest, kind of like what Carl Jung suggests when he said that the flying saucer might be a manifestation of the collective unconscious, representative of certain symbolic totalities, like colonialism, right? So these beings will sometimes take people out of their rooms or beds, allegedly, and bring you onto a ship where they tie you down and do weird experiments on you. And they seem to be completely apathetic to your suffering. Well, that's a lot like colonialism. And that was Carl Jung didn't point out the specifically colonialist um, characteristic or vibe of the alien abduction experience. It was another female researcher, and I'll have to find her name again. But she pointed out that it was very interesting how the great alien abduction experience has a lot of the same sort of motifs as colonialism, as abuse, like psychological abuse, sexual abuse, et cetera, and dealing with a narcissistic abuser, right? Dealing with a pathological abuser in general, psychopathy, sociopathy, and that maybe because of all the tragedies that have occurred over the past few hundred years, this is the thing that was made manifest from our fears, from our pains, et cetera, et cetera. Jacques Vallée cites this one experience where there was like a king, or at least I'm pretty sure it was a king, but let's say just a very high noble person who was extremely credible and would have no reason to make up an insane story. And they were on a road and they came across basically a terrifying and horrid looking creature with all sorts of like different, imagine kind of like a Baphomet, but look like a gremlin. This king says he came upon this being on the road and said, "What are you?" And the thing said, "I am the amalgamation of the fears, desires, and hopes of humanity." It basically essentially told this person is, "I was made of your feelings and ideas, and I came into physical being." Okay. And so this connects to this idea of, this flying saucer. What if it's a manifestation of our deep feelings, desires, hopes, right? We hope for a technology that saves us from our predicament. We hope that a savior comes. And since some people are not Christian, religious, but they still want a savior, right? Well, maybe that savior comes in a flying saucer and a gray alien or whatever extraterrestrial, Pleiadian blues, tall whites, whatever, reptilians. So, and what I'll find is that, the Christ Savior folks are kind of diametrically opposed to the UFO Savior people, right? You don't usually see them mixing. You got a lot of more atheistic or agnostic people who are part of like the Galactic Federation, at least non-religious people, right? They might be spiritual, but they don't really mess with the religions. And you'll see they will lean more toward the Galactic Federation or UFO, UFO, aliens coming to save us one day. They kind of watch from afar, but it's all this savior story. So that's another motif, this idea that the desire to save, because the experience of aliens isn't always bad for everyone. I would say most of the time you have these gray alien experiences and they end up being negative. But other people could, talk about seeing these tall whites and these Pleiadian blues and all this other stuff, and they have pretty positive experiences. And so that's another motif that's sort of tied to it, is this our desire to be saved from ourselves. And it's quite possible that we manifest these things. And so this is my belief. My belief is we made most, if not all of these things. That the supernatural world is tied so deeply to the human psyche. that it may actually exist as a result of the human psyche. We may have made all these things. And then I believe that some of these things became independent. And what becomes interesting here is we seem to have been imprisoned by our own technology in a sense, because we made these idea forms that then took on a consciousness. And because we made them with intention and energy and emotion, and then they became independent with their own agency because whoever made one didn't realize they made one, or whoever made one didn't keep it tethered to themselves. They became free agents. And if they are living beings in a sense, maybe not living in the visible light spectrum, but maybe living beings in a way we don't quite understand, they're going to need sustenance. They're going to need energy. Well, how are they made? With our energy, our intention, our emotions, our thoughts. So what are they going to feed on if we don't give it to them willingly, right? If we don't worship them in the church, if we don't have idols of them in our homes? Things might be clicking for you now. They might try to convince us to believe in them. They might try to come to us in dreams or visions and say, we're these aliens, and we're here to help you and guide you, and just tell people what we told you, right? And then you tell more people, and you get more people signed on to the Palladium Blues, or the I don't know, the Krishna, the Jesus. And I like to separate Christ from all these, because and there's the crucified Christ, and then there's the teacher Christ, the Christ consciousness Christ. The Christ consciousness Christ is us taking Christ's teachings and actually telling people the way they're supposed to be, kind of like the way we talk about Buddha. The blood of Christ thing is much different. This is, again, I think, a Tulpa gone rogue. Your Yahweh, your Baal, your Moloch, these types. But I do think they have their own agency now. It's also possible that there are what I call ancient ones that existed before the human psyche, ones that may have evolved from other psyches like dinosaurs or something, or other higher beings. But I do believe that there are sort of mirror reflections of us and our psyches that are made manifest in other realms. And another place you might want to look into is Rupert Sheldrake's work on the morphic resonance, the morphogenetic field, and this idea that our thoughts actually cause real reverberations, frequencies, vibrations in reality. I believe the morphogenetic field is sort of interwoven with the quantum realm. And then those vibrations in the morphic can cause disturbances in the space-time fabric where the quantum realm might be, or however you want to look at that, and then start to manifest reality. And that's why sometimes these things become physical. Sometimes we have supernatural experiences from poltergeistic, which is, understand, a poltergeist is a spirit or ghost made manifest from human emotion, right? A poltergeist isn't the same thing as a ghost. A poltergeist is essentially something that is made from our emotion. So these are just some thoughts to think about before the classes come out. Probably in about a month, we'll probably actually be doing the full 4 classes. And it's going to be called Tulpamancy and Meme Magic. And we're going to be breaking down a lot more about what I just said to you in regards to essentially what a tulpa is. Some of the people who have discussed these ideas, like Egregores, Tulpas, Thoughtforms, Aquastors, different analyses of what these things are, experiences with ghosts, gray aliens, werewolf, all these things, some of the similarities, and how we start to connect the dots and understand that we are intimately interconnected and interwoven with these experiences. They need us, it appears. They need our attention. They need us to give them power, to worship them, or give them some of our energy, or talk about them, right? Create more frequency about them. Then we'll be talking about the ways they're created and the ways they're sustained: music, dance, symbol, language, recitation, number of followers, right? Just think branding of a business. It's the same kind of thing. The more branding you have, the more culture you have within a tulpa, the stronger it becomes, okay? It's that kind of idea. And then we'll get into meme magic. Basically, we're like meme theory. A meme, one definition of meme is the smallest unit of an idea. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be getting into, sort of the science of how to understand these things in a mathematical sense, right? Like when you make a small song about the tulpa, how is its meter? How is its rhyme? Does it feel really good to say it? Do it when other people hear it? Do they want to say it too? And so in each individual letter of each sentence, and are using the appropriate language to really capture the people who are hearing the song, and then getting more people to want to use it. And then when you have that song, then it's like, okay, well, then maybe, or maybe you have a line or two, and you say, well, can I make a whole poem? And maybe that poem has 42 lines. And then you think, okay, well, then I'll also draw a picture of this tulpa, and it'll have 42 colors in the painting. And that will connect. That's another meme that will give it more power, make it resonate stronger, because it has those links with the numbers. Like, so it's so many different dimensions. There's X, Y, Z, W, T. Like, there's so many different dimensions that you'll be able to add on to this and understand how to create more and more dense tulpas, but also identify the most dense tulpas in our reality. And then lastly, we'll be talking about essentially identifying bad tulpas versus good tulpas, and being a person who puts good tulpas into the world and removes the ones that are not good. And understanding that there's sort of this paradoxical nature that, although I think there's a supernatural element, there doesn't have to be, because the psychological and sociological effects of ideas, they enchant people. They take over people. Ideas have people. People don't have ideas very often, right? So one person has an idea, and then that idea has many people as it spreads. And just to have, for an idea to have you, to be a loyal follower of an ideology, can absolutely fundamentally change who you are, and cause you to do things you wouldn't have done without it. And so that's like being possessed. You can be possessed by an idea, possessed by emotions. But I do believe there's a supernatural element to this. And I do believe some of these things are intelligent and have their own agency, and that they're sort of interrelated with the ideological and emotional matrix that spreads, right? If you have a bad mood and you're crappy to somebody else, and now they're in a bad mood and they're crappy to someone else, and it's all the spirit of bitterness about the world. Let's say one person's bitter about the world, and they see the whole thing that sucks, and they start being mean to people. And then the next person gets bitter about the world because they just had a bitter experience with somebody, and that spreads. Same thing with an ideology. People who believe they're Republicans and associate with that, and only watch this television show, and they see this person that's a Democrat automatically as an enemy without getting to know them. That's the way an ideology spreads. It appeals to your demographics, right? And all that. And it's the same thing. It spreads, and then it changes your behavior fundamentally. And that's a possession as well. But I do believe that there's actual intelligent beings that are being made manifest. Daniel 10 explains this, about this idea that there's like principalities that rule over lands, cultures, peoples, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They all have their own megatulpas, right? Like the Prince of Persia that battles with Gabriel. I believe that really happened in like dimensions that are unseen by us most of the time, unless this daddy-o's open all the way. Then you can start to see these things engaging with each other, and they'll start to engage with you because they'll realize that you can see them, right? So all that and much more. And so I hope you guys are interested in that. Stay tuned. Check out aseniancollege.com for more information, and to check out some of the classes we've already done. There's pre-recorded classes. You can get one-on-ones with us. Check out the TikTok at King Magon. Magon is spelled Maegon. And then, of course, King, right? So King Magon. Find us there. You get the link tree. It has all of our other socials. It has our actual community where you can sign up. It has our website and tons of other stuff. So thanks for being here, guys, and looking forward to do the whole class very soon.